Is the modern idea of Satan in the Bible? Probably not. Does it matter? Well, hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So what people normally think about the being Satan is definitely not in the Old Testament. Though the word is. The word in the Old Testament is Satan. There's another version, Hasatan. And it really is a role that is played by beings in the divine council, which is like a group of gods where the God of the Old Testament sort of presides over it in the earlier parts of the Old Testament. And the reason to say that that's definitely not this modern idea of Satan is because different beings sort of play that role, including an angel of the Lord. So that just doesn't match. Then there's the serpent in the garden, which people traditionally associate with Satan, but that's nowhere in the Bible actually connected to Satan. And then there's another character, Leviathan, another serpent, but this is like a 7-headed serpent. And it is a sort of ancient mythical creature that is just also not Satan and plays none of the roles that we think of in sort of modern day imagination of Satan. And by modern understanding of Satan, I really mean like the head evil spirit that's trying to, do chaos in your life and in the world. That actually, the first place that you see that is in the Enochic literature that happens in the Greco-Roman period. But there's a whole lot of names and possibly a whole lot of beings that are at one point or another defined as Satan. They've got different names like Samael and Azazel. And again, yes, they are talking about this head malevolent spiritual being, but not in the Bible. Now, it does appear that Jesus actually might be referencing that Enochic literature where it talks about him seeing a star falling from heaven, and that same sort of metaphor is used in the Enochic literature, but it's not a direct quote. But throughout the New Testament, this idea of a negative spiritual being or multiple malevolent spiritual beings is spotty, and at one point in Revelation, it's sort of connected with Leviathan, and at another point it's connected with anyway, it's not clear and definitely not well formed. That happens later. Satan as we know it, connecting all of these different disparate ideas and concepts and metaphors, starts to happen in the first 200 years after the death of Jesus. But it's, again, just sort of emerging, and the fullness of the idea of Satan or the devil doesn't really come fully formed until the Middle Ages. And so when people think about Satan, when people think about the devil, really what they're thinking about is this medieval understanding of the devil that sort of wraps a bunch of different ideas from the Bible into one being and then adds a little salt. So the next question is, maybe the more important one is, does it matter? And I'd say yes, but probably in a different way than many people would think. I'm not sure that it's super helpful to have in your mind a head malevolent being who is toying with humanity. Right? I think that generally what I've seen that used, how I've seen that used, is to exempt people from their own actions, right? The devil made me do it, in other words. So I don't have to claim responsibility for what I've done and the pain that it's caused. I can just offload that onto Satan. That's not helpful. But understanding that there is this progression of thought, this gathering together of different biblical concepts about Satan. Now that's helpful, because what it shows is there are people that are reading the Bible and having it as their ancient spiritual text and working with it. sort of using it to think about life and reality, connecting things that aren't connected there. And that's helpful because it gives us freedom, that this is part of how Christianity approached the Bible from the beginning. And so if the Bible is part of your sacred text, or if it is the totality of your sacred text, it means that you have permission to read it and gather your thoughts and sort of form your belief based around it, as well as traditions and other voices and your own experience. You are free to do that, because the idea of Satan that most people believe is in the Bible isn't, but it is a belief that has been shared and passed down for generations. And so we can have the freedom that brings.